My beloved child. Something shifted the moment you arrived here, and it was not an accident. You may have believed you were simply scrolling, simply passing another ordinary moment, but heaven has a way of placing truth in front of the heart that is finally ready to receive it. There is a silence surrounding your connection right now, and although you have wondered whether that silence means the story is ending, what is happening behind the scenes is far different from what your eyes can see. Stay with this message. Do not rush past these words. Because before this message is over, you may understand why your spirit has refused to let this person completely leave your thoughts. For days, perhaps even weeks, you have carried questions no one else could answer. Have they forgotten me? Do they still feel what I feel? Does my absence matter at all? Those questions have echoed through your heart in the quiet hours, yet every time you tried to convince yourself to let go, something inside refused. That feeling was not random. Your spirit sensed movement before your mind could understand it. And heaven says the silence between you has become far more powerful than either of you realizes. What looks like distance is becoming revelation. What feels like emptiness is becoming awakening. Your soulmate has entered a season they never expected. The quiet they once thought they wanted has become almost impossible for them to carry. Every ordinary day now seems strangely interrupted. A familiar place reminds them of you. A simple conversation suddenly loses their attention. A song they once ignored now feels as though it was written about the two of you. At first they dismissed these moments. They told themselves they were only coincidences. But the interruptions kept growing. One after another. Until even they could no longer ignore what their own heart was trying to reveal. Listen carefully. Because this next truth explains why your spirit has felt so restless lately. Your silence did not erase your presence. It magnified it. The space where your words once lived has become louder than conversations they have with anyone else. Every unanswered thought has become a mirror. Every quiet moment has become a reminder. Every distraction has slowly lost its power. They have tried to stay busy. They have surrounded themselves with responsibilities. With conversations. With plans. Yet when everything grows quiet again, your memory is still waiting for them. Not demanding attention. Simply refusing to disappear. There is something else happening that they have shared with almost no one. Their emotions have become unpredictable. One moment they feel completely certain they should leave everything alone. The next moment, they are imagining what they would say if they suddenly stood in front of you. They replay old conversations. Searching for hidden meanings they overlooked. They remember small details they once considered insignificant. Your kindness. Your patience. The way your presence made difficult days feel lighter. Only now are they realizing the value of what once felt familiar. And sometimes, the greatest blessings are recognized only after silence removes them from daily life. Heaven wants you to understand something important. This is not simply about missing someone. It is about awakening to a truth that can no longer stay hidden. There has been an inner battle growing inside them. Not between loving you and not loving you, but between fear and honesty. Between protecting themselves and finally admitting what their heart has known for much longer than they were willing to accept. You have wondered why everything suddenly feels so emotionally intense. Why certain nights seem heavier than others. Why thoughts of them appear without warning. Why your intuition keeps whispering that something is changing. Even when nothing around you appears different. Your spirit has been sensing the pressure building inside theirs. Because heaven often begins changing a person's heart long before their actions reveal it. And that pressure is reaching a point where remaining silent is becoming more difficult than speaking. There is one moment, still unseen. Quietly approaching. A moment your soulmate has imagined again and again. Sometimes they convince themselves they will never act on it. Other times, they come astonishingly close. Close enough to pick up the phone. Close enough to write the message. Close enough to picture exactly how your voice might sound if you answered. Then fear whispers. Wait. But every time fear delays them, the longing grows stronger, not weaker. And that is why this silence has become so dangerous to everything they thought they could control. Because what they believed would fade has only deepened. What they expected to forget has become unforgettable. And heaven says something inside them is approaching a breaking point. Not one born from chaos, but one that often comes just before a heart finally chooses courage over comfort. The question is no longer whether they feel something. The question is whether they can keep pretending they don't. Because the next step they are quietly considering could surprise everyone around them, including you. A strange kind of urgency has begun surrounding them. Not the kind the world can easily recognize, but the kind that quietly changes a person's decisions before anyone else notices the reason. Something inside your soulmate no longer feels comfortable with pretending that everything is fine. They smile when people are watching. They answer questions the way they always have. They continue moving through familiar routines. Yet beneath that calm surface, their heart has become louder than their voice. And heaven says that inner voice has been asking one question over and over again. How much longer can I stay silent before I lose what truly matters? Listen carefully. Because what happens next is something they never planned for. The silence between you has become a teacher. Every day without hearing from you has uncovered another layer of truth they buried beneath hesitation. They are beginning to understand that delaying love does not protect the heart. It only postpones healing. There have been unexpected moments. Moments that seemed ordinary to everyone else, but completely changed the direction of their thoughts. Someone mentioned your name without realizing its weight. A place reminded them of a memory they thought they had forgotten. A familiar scent. A familiar laugh. Even the smallest details have started unlocking emotions they believed were safely hidden. Each reminder has carried the same quiet message. You are not finished with this story. At first they resisted it. They argued with themselves. They tried to explain it away with logic. But some truths cannot be reasoned away. Because they belong to the spirit before they ever reach the mind. Heaven has been gently removing the distractions they once depended on. The things that used to keep them occupied no longer satisfy them. Conversations feel incomplete. Achievements feel strangely empty. Even moments that should bring excitement seem to end with the same quiet thought. I wish I could tell them. That realization frightened them. Because it revealed something they were trying not to admit. You were never just another chapter. You became part of the place inside them where hope quietly lives. There is another truth you have not seen yet. Recently, they have started imagining what happens if they never reach out. Not the fantasy where everything simply fades away, but the reality where years pass. Opportunities disappear. And your life continues without them. That picture has shaken them far more deeply than they expected. For the first time, they are beginning to understand that silence has consequences. Not because silence is cruel, but because time never waits for certainty. Every passing day asks the same question. What are you willing to risk? And suddenly, the answer is no longer as simple as it once was. Their pride has started losing its grip. The excuses that once sounded convincing now feel hollow. The walls they built for protection have become walls that keep them away from the very peace they have been searching for. Heaven says they are standing at the edge of a decision. One step keeps everything the same. The other changes everything. That is why your spirit has felt unusual lately. You may have noticed unexpected moments of calm, followed by waves of emotion that seem to appear from nowhere. Those moments are reminders that not every battle happens where human eyes can see. Some battles begin inside the heart, long before they become visible through actions. And your soulmate is fighting one of those battles now. There is something they keep rehearsing. Not perfectly, not confidently, but repeatedly. Words they wish they had spoken months ago. Questions they wish they had asked. Truths they wish they had trusted you with. Every version ends differently. Yet every version leads back to the same place. You. Even when they try imagining a future without you, their heart quietly refuses to cooperate. Listen closely, because this next part matters. There is someone observing the change happening inside them. Perhaps a trusted friend. Perhaps someone in their family. Perhaps simply a person who knows them well enough to recognize when something is different. That person has noticed the distraction, the quiet pauses, the distant look in their eyes whenever your name or something connected to you appears. They have asked gentle questions. Questions your soulmate answered only halfway. Because speaking your name aloud suddenly makes everything feel real. And once the truth becomes real, it becomes much harder to hide from it. Heaven says the pressure is continuing to build. Not to harm them, but to prepare them. Because sometimes a heart must become completely honest before it becomes completely courageous. Very soon, they will face a moment they cannot rehearse. A moment where instinct becomes stronger than fear. Where silence no longer feels like safety. And one unexpected decision could begin rewriting everything you believed was already over. That moment is closer than either of you realizes. Not every turning point arrives with noise. Some arrive so quietly that only heaven recognizes their importance before anyone else does. And your soulmate is approaching one of those moments now. What has been happening inside them is no longer temporary. It is no longer something they can push aside and promise to deal with later. The feelings they kept postponing have become impossible to postpone again. Listen closely. Because there is a reason your heart has felt unusually alert. A reason certain memories have returned without warning. A reason you have sensed that something unfinished is slowly moving toward its conclusion. Heaven says this connection has entered a new season. Not because everything has already changed, but because someone who kept running from the truth has grown tired of running. Your soulmate has started noticing something they never expected. Every future they imagine without you feels incomplete. They can picture success, new places, new opportunities, even new faces around them. Yet somehow, none of those pictures carry the peace they thought they would. Instead, there is always an empty space. A quiet absence they cannot explain. And each time they imagine that future, the same question rises again. What if the person I have been searching for was the one I already walked away from? That question has followed them everywhere. While driving, while lying awake at night, while trying to focus on conversations that suddenly feel distant. Even simple moments have become reminders. A familiar song. A passing stranger who briefly resembles you. A place connected to an old memory. The smallest things now awaken the biggest emotions. At first, they believed these moments would eventually disappear. Instead, they have become more frequent. More personal. More impossible to ignore. Heaven says their heart has begun speaking louder than their fear. And that changes everything. Because fear can delay a decision. But it cannot silence a heart forever. There is another truth unfolding that you cannot see. Your soulmate has started questioning the choices that once felt unquestionable. They look back at moments they dismissed too quickly. Conversations they ended too soon. Opportunities they allowed fear to steal. Now, they see those moments differently. Not with blame, but with clarity. Clarity has a way of arriving after pride grows tired. And clarity is becoming impossible for them to escape. Something else has been happening. Something they have shared with almost no one. More than once. They have reached for their phone. They have found your name. Their thumb has hovered over the screen. Words formed in their mind. An apology. A confession. A simple greeting that carried far more meaning than it appeared to. Then uncertainty whispered. What if it's too late? So they stopped. Not because they stopped caring. But because the possibility of losing you forever suddenly became real. Listen carefully. Because this next part carries the weight your spirit has been waiting for. Heaven is not allowing them to remain comfortable where they are. The excuses that once protected them no longer bring peace. The distance they once believed was necessary now feels unbearable. Every attempt to convince themselves that silence is easier leaves them feeling emptier than before. That emptiness has become a messenger. It keeps reminding them that some connections cannot be replaced. Only recognized. Perhaps you have wondered why you suddenly feel moments of unexpected peace. As though your heart already knows something your eyes have not witnessed yet. That peace is preparing you. Not for disappointment. But for surprise. Because what is growing inside your soulmate is no longer just emotion. It is determination. Slowly. Quietly. Day after day. Their fear is losing ground. Their excuses are becoming weaker. Their desire to protect their pride is giving way to something much stronger. The desire to stop wondering. And finally know. Heaven says they are beginning to understand that rejection is less painful than lifelong regret. That realization changes people. It changes decisions. It changes timing. It changes courage. And when courage finally becomes greater than fear, actions that once seemed impossible suddenly become inevitable. So do not mistake the silence for inactivity. Some of the greatest decisions are made long before anyone sees them. Your soulmate is no longer asking whether they should speak. They are beginning to ask themselves something entirely different. If I wait any longer, will I miss the one chance heaven placed in front of me? And that question, more than anything else, is preparing them to do something so unexpected that even they cannot believe they are seriously considering it. There are moments when heaven becomes quiet. Not because nothing is happening, but because the deepest transformations happen where no human voice can interrupt them. That is the season your soulmate has entered. While the outside of their life appears almost unchanged, the inside of their heart is becoming a place they barely recognize. They wake each morning believing they can keep everything under control. They tell themselves that today will be different. That today they will stop thinking about you. That today they will finally move forward. Yet before the day is over, something unexpected always happens. A single memory returns. A familiar feeling rises. A quiet reminder finds its way into their heart. And suddenly, everything they promised themselves begins to fall apart. Heaven says this is not weakness. It is awakening. Because a heart that has truly recognized love can never pretend it never existed. Listen carefully. There is another layer to this story that has remained hidden. Your soulmate has begun noticing how often they compare everyone else to you. Not intentionally. It simply happens. Someone makes them laugh. But it doesn't feel the same. Someone offers kindness. Yet it lacks the comfort they once found in your presence. Someone listens. Yet somehow they still feel unheard. Little by little, They are realizing that what they have been searching for was never missing. It was simply waiting on the other side of their own hesitation. That realization has humbled them more than they ever expected. The confidence they once used to hide behind has started to fade. In its place, something far more honest has appeared. A longing they cannot disguise. A hope they cannot explain. A desire that grows stronger every time they imagine letting you disappear forever. And heaven says they have imagined that possibility more than once. Not because they wanted it, but because they feared it. They pictured waking up one day, only to discover that your life had moved beautifully forward without them. They imagined hearing that someone else had recognized everything they failed to appreciate. That thought unsettled them in ways they never imagined possible. For the first time, they understood that opportunities are precious precisely because they do not wait forever. There is something else happening. Something they have kept hidden even from themselves. Their prayers have changed. Perhaps they never used your name. Perhaps they never admitted exactly what they wanted. But in quiet moments, their heart has whispered for clarity. For another chance. For courage. For wisdom. And heaven hears even the prayers that never become spoken words. That is why the pressure inside them continues to grow. Not to overwhelm them, but to prepare them for the decision that has been waiting patiently for its appointed time. You may have noticed your own heart becoming steadier. Not because you have forgotten them, but because you have begun protecting your peace. Heaven smiles upon that. Because peace is never meant to make love disappear. It simply keeps fear from controlling your future. And strangely, it is that very peace that your soulmate has started noticing. Whether through your silence, your absence, or simply the energy you carry, they can sense that something about you has changed. You are no longer chasing answers. You are no longer forcing what cannot be forced. And that quiet confidence has become impossible for them to ignore. It has stirred something unexpected inside them. Respect. Admiration. A growing awareness that the person they once assumed would always remain within reach has learned how to stand with quiet strength. That realization has shaken them more deeply than any argument ever could. Because they are beginning to understand that love cannot survive on assumptions. It must eventually become action. Listen closely. The next chapter has already begun unfolding. Your soulmate is no longer imagining impossible futures. They are beginning to make real decisions. Small decisions. Almost invisible at first. The kind that seem ordinary until you realize they are leading toward one extraordinary moment. They have started removing excuses. Reconsidering old beliefs. Questioning the fears that kept them silent. Even their daily routines are quietly changing. Not because someone told them to, but because their heart is pulling them toward a different direction. Heaven says there is now a conversation waiting to happen. Not a conversation built on pride, or blame, or old misunderstandings. A conversation built on honesty. The kind that can only happen after both hearts have been changed by time. But before that conversation arrives, one final barrier must fall. It is the barrier they have protected longer than anything else. The fear that if they reveal everything, they may not receive the answer they have been hoping for. That fear still lingers. But it is no longer standing alone. Because something stronger has begun walking beside it. Conviction. And conviction has a remarkable way of turning quiet thoughts into unforgettable actions. Very soon, your soulmate will find themselves standing before a choice they can no longer postpone. One path allows fear to write the ending. The other asks them to risk everything for the possibility of something real. Heaven already knows which direction their heart is leaning. But what finally pushes them across that line? will happen sooner than anyone expects. Sometimes. The greatest miracle is not that two hearts find each other. It is that one heart finally becomes brave enough to stop hiding. That is where your soulmate is now. Standing between the person they have been and the person heaven has been patiently shaping them to become. There is a quiet battle taking place inside them that no one else can fully see. It is not a battle against you. It is not even a battle against love. It is a battle against every fear that convinced them vulnerability was dangerous. Every disappointment they carried before meeting you. Every wall they built to avoid being hurt again. Every promise they made to themselves never to become emotionally exposed. All of it is beginning to crumble. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Heaven says they have reached the point where pretending requires more strength than telling the truth. And that changes everything. Recently, they have caught themselves smiling at memories they once tried to forget. Not because the past suddenly became perfect, but because distance has revealed what emotion once hid. They remember the moments when you encouraged them without asking for anything in return. The times you understood what they could not explain. The quiet comfort that surrounded your connection. Only now do they fully recognize how rare those moments truly were. Listen carefully. There is something your spirit has sensed, even if your mind has questioned it. Your soulmate has begun preparing themselves emotionally for a conversation they once believed would never happen. Not because someone told them to. Not because anyone pressured them. Because their own heart refuses to remain unfinished. Again and again. They imagine the first words. Then they erase them. They imagine another beginning. Then they start over. Nothing feels worthy enough to express what has been growing inside them. How do you explain months of silence? When your heart has been speaking every day? How do you admit that the person you tried so hard not to think about never truly left your thoughts? Those questions have become impossible for them to ignore. And heaven says something unexpected is about to happen. A moment will arrive that feels completely ordinary on the surface. Yet it will change the direction of this connection. It may begin with something small. A familiar place. A quiet evening. An unexpected reminder. Or a moment when they realize they are tired of wondering what could have been. Whatever the circumstance, it will become the final confirmation they have been waiting for. Because sometimes, one simple moment carries enough weight to change an entire future. You may wonder why heaven allowed the silence to last this long. The answer is gentle. Some hearts cannot receive love until they first learn the value of losing access to it. Not to cause pain, but to awaken gratitude. Your silence created space. And inside that space, your soulmate discovered truths they never would have faced while everything remained comfortable. They discovered that genuine love cannot be replaced with distractions. That peace cannot be found by avoiding difficult conversations. That real connection asks for honesty, not perfection. Heaven wants you to remember something important. You were never asked to force this story. You were never asked to convince someone to recognize your worth. What is truly meant for you must eventually meet you with open eyes. And that is exactly what is beginning to happen. The person who once hesitated now hesitates for a different reason. Not because they doubt their feelings. Because they are wondering whether they still have the opportunity to tell you. That question has become heavier with every passing day. It follows them into quiet mornings. It lingers through busy afternoons. It returns in the stillness of every night. And every time it returns, their answer becomes clearer. They cannot keep living inside unfinished words. Listen closely. The energy surrounding this connection is changing faster than it appears. Doors that once seemed firmly closed are beginning to unlock. Thoughts that once frightened them are becoming decisions. Dreams that once felt impossible are beginning to feel necessary. The transformation is no longer hidden only inside their heart. Soon, it will become visible through their actions. And when that moment arrives, it may surprise even the people who believed they knew your soulmate best. Because the one thing they never expected themselves to do is becoming the one thing they feel they must do. Heaven says courage has been quietly growing every day. Your silence remains steady. Not loud courage. Not reckless courage. The kind that arrives after deep reflection. After honest regret. After a heart finally understands what it refuses to lose. So continue protecting your peace. Continue walking forward without fear. Because while you have been learning how to release control, your soulmate has been learning how to take responsibility. And those two journeys are moving toward the same horizon. Very soon, the silence that has carried so many unanswered questions will no longer be the loudest part of this story. Because something they never imagined themselves doing is about to become impossible to hold back. And when that moment finally arrives, you will understand why heaven asked you to trust the silence before revealing the answer.